2 hours to end of year. Buhari yet to assent to 2021 budget. It comes with 2 riders. January-December cycle threatened. And the presidency is responding by saying, we are studying document. And that's the picture story. I'd just like to bring it to your attention. It's children who wait to be admitted into schools during the grassroots sensitization and mobilization work by high-powered committee set up by Borno State Governor in that state. So you can see quite a number of enthusiastic children who are desirous of going to school, waiting to be admitted. And this is very good news indeed, except that, of course, COVID-19 protocols is clearly absent, and which not good for efforts to contain the second wave of coronavirus. But I will speak to that later. To other stories trending on the front page of the Daily Trust, Morik kicks as can Southern Middle Belt leaders back Kuka. You can read up the details of that on page 4. 23 killed in Niger truck crash, that's police on page 38. Attacks won't stop us from rebuilding Northeast. That's the Northeast Development Commission, NEDC. Details of that on page 6. 1 month after, abducted Abu lecturer regains freedom. Good news, and we congratulate him for that and thank God for his life. It's on page 8. A little just below the nameplate, other stories trending. Reps deny apologizing over Buhari invitation. You can look up that on page 4. It's just a little below the nameplate. There you have it. Other stories, telecom sector, named biggest headache of subscribers yet. Details of that on page 17. Now, how COVID-19 and SARS shaped 2020 judicial year. You can also read up the details of this story on page 23. Jimmy?
Now let's look up what's trending in the Punch newspaper. Just above the masthead, you see transporting containers in Lagos equals shipping cost from China. That's a report that came in, and I'm sure it's going to be a trending issue. You find that on page 11. Afrexim Bank predicts 10% rise in 2021 oil prices. That's good news for Nigerians and the 2021 budget. You find details on page 19. National Assembly transmits 13.5 trillion budget to Buhari. That's coming from the Senate President. You find details on page 20. Just below the masthead, COVID-19 second wave. Federal government, National Assembly consider UK-US flights ban next week, with riders, lawmakers, ministry holding meetings, considering all options, says Senate Committee Chair. Fresh ban can hurt the economy. Experts and stakeholders are talking there. And Lagos goes after fake COVID-19 certificate sellers. And the picture story there you see, ex-defense minister Bali, Domkat Bali buried, Lalong Olonishakin and others pay tribute to a soldier who paid his dues to Nigeria. You find details on page 9. Sokoto plans upgrading of Shagari Education College to university. Details on page 21. Ex-rep dies from COVID-19 complications in Kano. Details on page 11. Kaduna notorious bandit killed in supremacy battle. Government claims. You find details on page 8. At the bottom plate of the Punch newspaper, 23 killed as Lagos-bound truck crashes in Niger State. You find details on page 5. Gunmen kill Katsina community vigilante leader, abduct 8 orders. That's on page 9. I visited US to see my children, not for checkup. Coming from Sule. Details on page 9. Mayo.
Thank you, Juma. Let's start with the story on COVID-19. The second wave of COVID-19 now ravaging the country has been attributed to the opening up of the economy, the reopening of schools, and large religious congregations and other special gatherings. The Commissioner for Health in Lagos State, Professor Akin Abayomi, also identified general laxity and a false sense of security among Nigerians, especially to non-adherence to safety guidelines by citizens. Professor Abayami says citizens must make lifestyle adjustment by adhering to non-pharmaceutical interventions in order to live with the pandemic. He says it also a factor that has been identified is the positivity of inbound travelers coming into Lagos, which was about 8% and this week, and previously was about 4%. He says a large number of Nigerians returning from abroad for Earlytide is partly responsible. He drew attention to fake COVID-19 results that is on sale and asserted that Lagos State will prosecute both buyers and sellers of COVID-19 results. Talking about COVID-19, by this morning, Nigeria Center for Disease Control reported 397 new cases in 18 states. Still, Lagos is topping it with 144. Plateau is second with 3. Kaduna is 48. Adamawa is coming up with 36. FCT, which used to be second, they reported 5 cases. We lost 10 Nigerians yesterday to COVID-19, and the total now is 84,811. So far, we have lost 1,264 Nigerians to COVID-19. Those who are currently in hospital have increased to 12,190. In Osun State, the government has banned what they describe as crossover services and other countdown activities. Security operatives have been directed to enforce it, but the chairman of the Christian Association of Osun State, Bishop Amos Ogunride, says that we are prevailing on the governor Oyetola to please reverse the ban on crossover service. Residents and citizens of Osun State have been enjoined to cut down on social gatherings, weddings, naming ceremonies, and funeral ceremonies. Also in Rivers State, Governor Yusuf Wike has announced a fresh lockdown with effect from 1st of January 2021. This, he says, is to curb the excesses of COVID-19, which is apparently on the increase. Punch reports that citizens in Rivers State are appealing to Governor to block foreigners from coming into Rivers State. And they are saying that Nigerians who travel abroad bring the virus, and locking residents inside will increase the hardship on rivers. In Cross River State, there's a curfew there that's been imposed from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And churches are enjoined to fix their crossover services within the time permitted, while also observing lay-down procedure. Lagos has a curfew of 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. curfew. Ondo has cancelled crossover services. So that is to tell you the extent to which there's alarm about increase in COVID-19.
The issue of crossover, services, which is of course 9 vigils. I think states which permit such should be able to enforce, strictly, very strictly, if they can. That is. Otherwise, I don't see why you can't do crossover night in your homes. I mean, it's basically about, worshiping and praying, all through into the new year. So you can do that within the confines of your home. After all, I believe is that God is omnipresent.
Yes.
He's here and everywhere.
He's everywhere.
And everywhere. So if the situation demands, that you obey certain civic laws, and regulations, I think we should do that. And by the way, Governor Lalong has also been telling his stories. I'm sure you know that he too tested positive.
He's now tested negative.
He has been telling his stories of how he survived. So it's not, it wasn't that easy. He came out after 1 week to say, okay, he has tested negative. But if you read his account, it wasn't that easy. It wasn't that easy. So, but he's warning and appealing to people to take these precautions, non-pharmaceutical measures, very seriously. And we have not. In Abuja, if you remember, at the outbreak of COVID-19, the enforcement was very strict. And we know we have brought the chairman of the task force here severally, that's Atta. It was quite effective. And we saw a lot of people, taking precautions. And suddenly, when the rules were relaxed, everybody relaxed. And people became complacent. So it's
danger.
Nigerians rested on their oars there and just, believe that this is not an African man disease. It's only a white man that will die from COVID-19.
Well, COVID-19 is ravaging all over the world. And the earlier we took caution, the better. Because anytime you jettison the non-pharmaceutical initiatives, you are exposing yourself to danger.
And endangering others too at the same time.
Yes.
But Bayo, sorry, we also need to look at our messaging. It has to be different now that it's been confirmed that there's, a new variant.
Yeah, a new variant.
Which is more vicious and spreads faster across all ages.
Faster.
Exactly. So there must be a change in our approach. I mean, what lessons have we learned from the previous measures? Obviously none.
Very little, other than complacency that, we seem to be immune from COVID-19, but it is real and it is ravaging. The other story that has also drawn attention is the Lagos State is to set up a special team to take over the traffic management to contain the notorious Apapa gridlock. Governor Sanwo-Olu yesterday went round after a meeting with members of the port officials, haulage unions, and also port owners, and said a new approach will be adopted. And apparently the initiative is to establish a team that will take over the task that was initially taken over by the presidential tax team. The view is to tackle the indiscipline, the cabal, and also the extortion that they say is going on there. There's a story from Kaduna about rival bandits group taking on one another, and the profit from that is that a notorious bandit, Nasru Kachala, who has been responsible for banditry and kidnapping along Kaduna Abuja highway, and also a crisis in Chukun and Kajuru area, ended up being killed. They were rivals. They were fighting over cattle they had stolen, and in the process, they turned their guns against one another. And the Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs, Samuel Arwan, has confirmed that, and already Kachala was on the wanted list of the police.
Prayers are working.
Yes, exactly. Let's now go to the editorial, or you have something to say?
Yes,
no, the editorial, yes, the editorial...
It's talking about reopened borders, and let me just read a little.
Yes.
External vigilance is required, especially with new strain of COVID-19 virus. The idea of reopening the borders at this time almost looks like cutting the nose to spite the face. With the new strain of the COVID-19 virus, the danger is huge, and the citizens that the government thinks it is protecting might just be struggling between life and death in a country with a very weak health sector.
Yes.
That's quite alarming.
Yes. What the editorial is saying is that the president gave approval for 4 border points to be opened. And the editorial is saying that it's rather premature now for us to open the border. Initially, the concern for closing the border was to face the challenge of small arms being smuggled across the border, drugs being smuggled across the border, and also importation of certain food items, which was undermining the agricultural initiative. But with the COVID-19 going up on the high now, the editorial is saying that we cannot be seeking to protect our nationals and also leave our borders open. But the worrying is not the major border points. After all, it was only 4 border points that have been opened. But there are over 1,400 illegal border points.
Much more than that.
In some states, you just cross this line and you're in another, country.
But you see, the activities of smugglers is seriously undermining the nation, and it is often said that the bigger the head, the bigger the headache. The large expanse of Nigeria's marshland faces the challenge of large hundreds, thousands of kilometers of borderline that has to be covered. We cannot do that manually. So we are challenging and over-challenging our custom and immigration officials. The earlier we resort to technology, manning our borders, the better.
I think on this program, the Minister of Finance, did say that, part of the resolutions, or part of the recommendations for the reopening of the border was that technology would be deployed to, man some of those borders. But this editorial, I think, is cautioning on, COVID-19, the impact of COVID-19.
Community spread.
Yes. So this calls for
the opening of the border during a pandemic cannot be a solution.
Exactly.
Okay, on that note, Bayo, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you too.
Yeah, so we'll take a break now. When we return, we'll begin our review of 2020.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together. Nigerian youths are about the greatest assets the country has at the moment. It is therefore not surprising that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is strategically responding to the yearnings of the youth through multiple projects and programs. Youth entrepreneurship support years by Bank of Industry, the Youth Investment Fund by the CBN, and several other conditional cash transfer programs. Recruitment of 774,000 social workers, majority of whom are youth, and so many other projects that are beneficial to youths directly or indirectly. If the administration can do all this, definitely with a degree of patience and time, it can achieve more. Nigerian youths must come together to say no to terrorism, no to vandalism, and no to all disruptive tendencies. Hashtag Youth for Greater Nigeria, pacifying the youths, unifying the nation.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Do you know that 35% of every girl child and women are raped on a daily basis? Some are killed in the process, some take their lives in shame, others remain emotionally dead for life. It is sad. This culture is not ours, definitely not African. How did we allow bad culture to infiltrate and take over? Even if you lack fear for the law, what of fear of God? And you, why do you cover up rape acts when it happens? Remember, a problem shared is a problem half solved. Never cover any rape act because a rapist is a murderer. It could be you or your loved ones next. Women must be treated like the prize gem they are. Say no to rape.
Hotspur ended 2020 in a slump, but will their fortunes change when they take on Leeds United in their first game of 2021 on Saturday? It's Tottenham versus Leeds United on the Premier League Live, showing on the NTA network from 1 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Axis Bank, Bye Jebu, Lipton, and Close Up in association with Goal.com.
All right, welcome. If you've just joined in, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria. And as with us here, as is with our tradition on Good Morning Nigeria, we'll bring you highlights of some of our programs. We, of course, have featured in the course of the year, and that usually happens towards the end of the year. So today we begin, of course, such highlights, such review. And we have here with us Dr. Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu, He's a researcher, political scientist, and public affairs analyst. He'll be reviewing some of the episodes of Good Morning Nigeria today with us. Let me quickly and warmly appreciate him. Dr. Hamiso, quite a while. What we'll say, Kwanabuko?
You're welcome.
Well,
Thank you.
COVID-19.
So if not because of COVID-19, you should be back in the classroom by now.
Yes.
But very soon. Anyway, we're starting our highlights with security matters.
Yes. And recently, some bandits abducted students of Government Science Secondary School, Kankara, in Katsina State. The incident generated concern about the safety of schools in Nigeria, especially in the regions that are epicenter of insurgency and banditry.
And so on Good Morning Nigeria today, we had an edition on the issue. I'm sure most of you watched it. We titled it Securing Schools on the 16th of December 2020. And that particular episode was presented by Kingsley and Kieran. Let's take a listen.
What is your impression as to what's happening? DIG Joshua Kabila.
Thank you. It's not a surprise to have that kind of incident at that axis because Katsina, Zamfara and Kaduna has had a lot of bandits activities in that thick forest that spread across these three states. And so that incident that happened wouldn't be a surprise. Rather, it's a wake-up call for Nigerians to ensure that something better is done to prevent or to nip in the bud when it is happening. I think that is exactly what we should be thinking of.
When you say it is not a surprise, so the presumption therefore will be it probably was expected or that it might happen, it could happen. And if that is the presumption that we can make in this respect, why then would it be that the security agents or agencies were caught flat-footed?
Yes, I am saying it is not a big surprise because the activities of bandits in Kaduna, part of Kaduna, Zamfara and Katsina have been quite a while, and there are a lot of attempts, particularly in Katsina, where the governor also have had issues of letting a lot of them coming up to surrender their arms and also pledge loyalty and also undertake the fact that they will not go back to such places, and they were instituted into the system. They were brought in and then planted into the system and accepted. And so you could see that it is true that there are a lot of bandits around there, but this one of the Kankara abducting these students is quite a new kind of activities by these bandits, and we just have to ensure that there are solutions to it, and there are a lot of ways we can checkmate that kind of incident.
It's quite sad that we have very poor security awareness, security knowledge in this part of the world. And well, let's just go back for a second and look at the scenario you painted. In Chibok, they came with trucks. Some of the trucks broke down. Some of the girls escaped. In Dapchi, none of the girls escaped. All the girls were secured and taken and then returned later, except Leah Sharibu, who is still in captivity. And now in this one, this is a classic. This is an unprecedented terrorist attack. First of all, the world world has never seen anything like this in terms of numbers of victims seized, in terms of numbers of abductees. So this is unprecedented. So Nigeria has just entered the infamous World Book of Guinness Record in the wrong direction. Now, secondly, the herding, the movement, the transportation, because it's a logistical issue here. How do you move 300 persons out from a school and on motorbikes? How many motorbikes do you need? How many attackers were there in the first place? So I think I can tell you, like you said, let's try to create a scenario of what happened. Well, what happened here was that it was a well-planned attack. Well, a lot of students are missing, probably in that number, in that magnitude, and they were herded. They went because one of the students who escaped and came back talked about the march into the forest. So they were herded. That is like the way you herd cattle. You just say, go this direction. And so they weren't all really carried in the bikes. Of course, that would be a logistical nightmare. It wouldn't, they wouldn't be able to do that because you remember they have to have enough of a number of attackers to take down the school and then carry each bike, have each bike, then carry maybe 2 passengers on. So if you do the math, you see that they needed, at least a couple hundred bikes to do that logistical movement. So I think they use the herding technique. When you fire shots, when you create fear in people start behaving like cattle. You just say, move this way, and they will move. And that's what they did. Now, some of the students who were courageous enough were able to dodge. That's how you got the 17 that they say came back, or whatever numbers. But at least there was a student who was interviewed, which I saw specific, because I love case studies for this reason. You can know the stories, you can know what exactly transpired, and you can now read into it whatever scenarios based on your knowledge and experience and what have you. So I think, sir, that we are getting to a level where we've seen that happen in a lot of those states around the Rugu Forest, Zamfara, Katsina, Niger, Kaduna. We've seen these mass abductions, and this is just taking mass abductions to a new level. And I think the fear factor is so much. This shows that there's an urgent need to strengthen soft targets in this country. The government is really not doing enough. The communication is not there. We need to go out there and start showing films and develop protocols that will teach our populations that they are soft targets, but they have strengths of their own. Some of the strengths which DIG Habila was just talking about, vigilance. You have to be vigilant. You have to see what is going on around you. You have to notice unusual stuff around you, not necessarily strangers, even because your own brothers can do harm to you. If they start behaving in unusual ways, then of course you had the issue of the remoteness of that school, which made it a prime target.
The incident started around 9 p.m. Based on the account by the students that were either rescued or escaped. And so the cover of darkness also helped these attackers. The second thing that also helped them, in addition to what Dr. Oda mentioned, is the fact that they appeared to the students like security personnel. Now, we're not sure if they were wearing uniforms or it was the language they used, but the account of the students that escaped indicated that they thought they were security personnel. They used flashlight to ask them to come back after they had jumped over the defense to escape into the bush. These attackers now used flashlights to bring them back. So all of these factors aided, this huge number that we're talking about. And I agree with Dr. Una that unfortunately, again, we've entered the infamous Guinness Book of Records in terms of number of victims of kidnapping. My friends across the world have been asking me this question: how is it possible that 500 plus students will be carried away and nothing visible really to indicate how it happened and then why it happened? So to the world, really, this is a huge surprise, and to us security experts, this is of course a huge surprise. surprise. Now, the second part of your question, we've always, tracked this association between terrorists in the northeast and these bandits in the northwest. Now, there is a lot of nomenclature that is being used to describe these bandits, starting from the word bandits down to the Global Terrorism Index that is using the word Fulani extremist, and then to criminologists who will call them criminals. Now, irrespective of what you use, the fact that they are attacking vulnerable populations means, unfortunately, that we should have taken this threat more seriously than we're taking it. It's also very important to note the statement by the Minister of Defense when he recommended that these criminals, bandits, or whatever you want to call them, be categorized as terrorists. So clearly there is that association between the terrorist groups in the northeast and the northwest. And then not too long ago, precisely around July or August, the Ministry of Defense released a statement sort of warning that records show that these bandits, whatever we want to call them, have now weapons that they categorize as terrorist weapons, including rocket-propelled grenades, AK-49s, AK-47s, and name them. In fact, in that statement, the Ministry of Defense indicated that they now have the capability to shoot down helicopters. So clearly, we're dealing with non-state actors that are metamorphosizing into a bigger threat. Now, add this to the common factor, and I want to emphasize this point. Dr. Ona has mentioned it, the ungoverned spaces that exist in the north. In this instance, we're talking of the Rugu forest. That forest is cuts across at least 8 local governments in Katsina. So it is unfathomable that knowing that you are dealing with that types of threats across 8 local governments, and yet you left this soft target with, unfortunately, forgive my use of the word, sitting dogs that came and have been taken away by these bad guys. So our threat assessment, our vulnerability assessment, and our risk profiling, unfortunately, has not done us very well in this regard. And like I said earlier on, we do have the Safe School Declaration. This is the time to now start to implement that Safe School Declaration and ensure that all schools are protected. We're not reinventing the wheel. It was done in Pakistan, and in fact, in the US, it was done. The US has this peculiar case of active shooter situations where gunmen, sometimes even students, come into the schools to kill. So what they did, they also introduced the same Safe School initiative to do 3 things basically, and just to conceptualize what AIG has mentioned. One of the conceptualization is to protect the school community. The second one is to protect the community where the school itself exists. And then the third one is to protect vulnerable groups, specific vulnerable groups within the school community. So this is we're not reinventing the wheel. It's just for us to start this process as early as possible.
And a few days later, the abducted schoolboys were released unhurt, and that captured the attention of the Good Morning Nigerian team, in which a special edition was put together to analyze the positive developments. The program was presented by Claire and Kisley.
The abduction of the students from the secondary school in Kankara, it's just like what happened in Dapchi. It's a situation that the government finds unacceptable and will continue to work to ensure that not only all our students are safe, but that the whole country is safe. Having said that, we must also situate in the correct context what happened in Kankara. We are in a world of terrorism, banditry, and Nigeria is not an exception. As I tried to illustrate during my press conference yesterday, that from the US to New Zealand to France to Nigeria, we all have regular doses of terrorism. if the most powerful country in the world could not prevent 9/11 from happening, 2001, nor France prevent over 26 people being killed by terrorists, or New Zealand could not stop in 2019 March about 49 Muslims being killed by terrorists in two churches, two mosques. And all we can do in Nigeria and all over the world is to ensure that we put in place measures that will ensure that we're on top of this matter. And another thing that I think we must emphasize is the difference between the way terrorism and banditry was handled before and the way it has been handled now. You see, in 2014, we had the unfortunate incident where over 200 girls were abducted from Chibok. In Dapchi, in 2018, similar thing happened. And just last week, Kankara also happened. But you see, but the difference in the three is the proactiveness, the response in containing and resolving the issue. And this is what I think Nigerians must appreciate. That when Dapchi happened, or Kankara happened, we immediately took responsibility. We did not seek to scapegoat. Neither did we seek to blame any other person. But we went in, and within days, we were able to resolve this. But for you to think that there will be a country where we have security challenges, I think that will only happen in Ethiopia and Ethiopian society. So we will continue to improve on our social, economic policies. We will also continue to equip and train better our military, and we continue to motivate all our security agencies so that we'll be ready when such things happen. But the most important thing is the measures we put in place to prevent them from happening. As opposed to Chibok, where it took about 3 weeks before anything was done. In Dapchi, in Kankara, within hours, the federal government moved in and dominated the scene. Yes, we employed both kinetic and non-kinetic approaches. But the important thing that is the result.
In Katsina, we are in a period of thanking God for the safe return of these children. The parents are so happy. His Excellency, our governor, is so happy, and we are reuniting them with their families. So Katsina is in a joyful mood, very grateful to God and to Mr. President and to the security forces for what they have done, which my governor has explained to the nation yesterday.
It's actually a delegate. Any rescue operation is actually a delicate operation in the sense that if you are not very professional, the tide could turn negatively. This is an operation where you don't rely on your capacity on platforms alone, on the mechanical weapons, but it goes down to the level of your ability to effectively carry out this mission with what we call UAC, unarmed combat, which is most times the effective weapon, the effective effort in this particular case. And what do I mean by that?
having to silence your enemy and then taking your objective away without firing a shot. So it's very delicate, because in the course of trying to do that, the enemy in this time, in this case, the abductors, will now respond if you don't manage it well, if you don't handle it well, using the weapon against you. And in the course of that, the children who are in between the two parties now become the victim. And when they become the victim, of course, the people outside there will attribute it to failure on the part of your own security forces. So it's a very delicate thing.
The Minister of Defense led a delegation to Katsina and Kankara. And his delegation, the service chiefs were there, the CDS was there, the NSA was there. And there the minister gave the directives, very simple and straightforward. I want you to make sure that all of these boys are rescued intact without any casualty. That's the rule of engagement as far as that is concerned. No casualty, all the boys must be rescued within the shortest time possible. So, with this kind of directives, the rules of engagement for the field commander is very clear. There should be no casualty, and the boys must be rescued. So, minimum force here will only be limited by anything that will result in casualty. So that was why the military closed in from 4 different fronts, including insertion that was made from reinforcement from another division to ensure that the entire location was sealed up. They were all under siege, and they were fully aware, the bandits, they were fully aware they are under siege. They are feeling and seeing the impact of the military presence from the air and from the ground. So with that kind of something, it was very easy for the commander to move, even though during the advance towards the bandits location where the boys were held, the military encountered some pockets of opposition, which they cleared right from Power, where they first met the opposition, and they moved further into the forest where the bandits were keeping the boys. But when you are doing that kind of operation, even though the instruction was no casualty, but the casualty we are talking about mainly was from the boys. The casualty on the enemy, definitely, there are a lot of them were neutralized, because in the advance to contact, they lay ambush along the way in 2 places. In fact, the second place where they put their ambush, there was a serious resistance from them, because they occupy rocks, they were hiding. They delayed the movement of the military for some hours before they were cleared and moved forward.
All right. In fact, Jume, I remember that conversation. It was quite emotional for me, given the fact that first the children, all of them, were rescued unharmed, and the explanations that the security experts, that's of course the major generals, had to give to us how they went about rescuing the boys, the directives to ensure that not one of them was harmed, was quite emotional for me. And of course, the minister earlier on came on to say that, look, what went in for us, for the federal government, was the fact that they had to step in, hours after.
It was timely.
Yes, it was timely, and they took control, and they got collaboration from the affected states. And so that's why Dr. Hamiso, I don't know if you watched the 2 episodes. Let's begin with the first part, which was the kidnap, where we had DIG Operations retired Joshak Habila. We had Dr. Ona Ekomo, and of course risk management analyst Kabiru Adamo. And there were specific issues that they raised. The need for, the mass abductions, which have become, common, and the technique, the headed technique that is now applied. They also raised the issue of need to strengthen soft targets and the safe school initiatives that Kabiru Adamo. You want to? What's your view generally?
Well, in every security situation, especially when a country is faced with terrorism, it is always a contest of messaging, where the country plan towards the activities of the terrorist, and the terrorists in turn plan to penetrate the defense system created by government. So it's not always an easy situation. It will not be easy. But the problem with Nigeria and Nigerians is over politicization of issues, where we require collective responsibility in order to overcome a situation. We are divided into for or against. The most difficult thing to do in the world is to police the entire space. The easiest thing to do is to commit crime, because over time the population always outweigh the security forces, and that is why security is a collective responsibility. In Nigeria, over time, even before colonialism, there was a near-perfect security system. Though people may argue that, okay, because the population was minimal at that point in time, but the most important thing was that there was a mechanism in place that checkmate the activities of individuals and visitors. For instance, in northern Nigeria, if you come into Kano State at that point in time, though not Kano State, but Kano, the first thing you do by the time you arrive is to go to Meungwa to report yourself that, okay, or the person you came to visit will take you to Meungwa to say, I am a visitor in your kingdom.
Meungwa is
the village head or the district head or anybody of that nature who is authorized to cater for the need of the public and the people. And then you go there with your visitor and you introduce the visitor so that if anything happens and there is need to trace him. Now, the problem with Nigeria is there are no such security measures in place anymore. So I go to park and I'm given a manifest, and then I put down my name and my phone number. It ends there. By the time I get to my location, you are not reporting to anybody. You go to wherever you like, you carry out your activities, and then the nonchalance attitude of the populace, the masses. Now, if, for instance, we cite unusual movement of persons that are not authorized to bear arms, I've seen a couple of videos like that. Instead of alerting the police or any other security agencies, what we do is to record them from afar, so that we'll be the first to post it on Facebook. And that is all. Now, what I'm saying in essence is we continue to blame government. Government effort is not enough. The state is not deepened to the extent that it can police everywhere. So it becomes a collective responsibility.
Let's look at the issue that they raised.
Yes.
The concern is the mass abductions, which it's not the first time.
Yes.
Of Chibok, of Dapchi, and then Kankara.
I was coming to that.
Yes.
You see, we are not problem solvers in this country. We only lament and lament and lament without proper solutions. And when we do, the solutions will only scratch the surface. You see, if the communities where all of this happened are proactive enough, and they have their own system of security or securing themselves, the first persons that will blow the alarm, that will equally mount pressure on them to delay the movement, will be the locals themselves. But there are a lot of challenges with that. Now, for instance, if you go to the local government level, you go to police station, they don't have functional vehicles. So their movement is curtailed. And by the time you talk to the DPO, it will tell you it's waiting for reinforcement from the state capital. And then the state capital will tell you they're waiting for a directive from the IG because they've not authorized them. Now, in every mass abduction, the only technique you could use where your capacity is not enough is to create scenes that will delay the movement, that will obstruct the movement. But in terms of planning in Nigeria, we do not have that in place. We would have done that when the Chibok gas stuff happened. Assuming it was a mistake or we didn't plan for it, we didn't expect it, now the Dapchi girls issue came up. Now, to us, it will not happen again. So they've been rescued and then we go back to sleep.
One is still...
Yeah, Leah Sharibu is still there. Now, we've been saying release Leah. But the first thing we should have done was to make the abduction impossible in the first place.
But now you've talked about the need for the locals, the communities to be actively involved in securing their areas. But we also have, and Jume, you know about this, the civilian JTF also. And there was a time we talked about...
Not in all states.
They
only exist in Borno.
But there was a time we also had the forest rangers who were supposed to be, you know, the triggers or something of alert. So what could have happened?
You see, a lot of things are happening. I will put the first blame on the governors. Where you have governors that take humongous amount of money as security votes. And because security votes are not audited, they spend it on other things other than providing security. Now, most of the insecurity we're talking about in Nigeria happen in a local government, a local government within the state. But what has been happening over time is to transfer responsibility to federal government. And the focus has always been on federal government. And then the blame has always been it is federal government that is controlling the security.
The delegation of duties.
And responsibilities. Because the first line of defense for every state is the local government. The local government, and that is why there is a grant or subvention, statutory allocation to local government.
Okay, how do we achieve strengthening soft targets quickly before we move on to the release and the safe school initiatives that Kabiru preferred?
You know, Josiah Abila spearheaded that committee on safe school initiative.
Yes.
I wonder what happened to it.
You see, the safe school initiative was not even an initiative that was developed in Nigeria. It was a support by Gordon Brown to Nigeria when the Chibok girls incident happened. So it was not in the first instance a Nigeria initiative. And the problem we have with Nigeria with such initiatives is that funding becomes difficult once the donors decided to say we are done, then the program ends. Not looking at the benefit of this program to see how we can improvise it, fund it, and own it. So even in the Northeast that we're talking about, the Safe Schools initiative ought to provide the utmost security that was needed. But then we are not problem solvers, so we're not able to even review it, own it, and fund it so that it becomes a strategy for securing our schools. And if we don't localize it, then we'll continue to say funding is the problem. If you ask across board, they will tell you funding is the problem. But we don't need huge funding.
Yes, because we have to move. We have other episodes we need to review. You may want to start off with the release. I mean, that was quite. It brought joy to so many people. The president was elated. You know that it was a classic rescue. The minister did say, look, government, moved in, immediately and took control, and then the kinetic and non-kinetic tactics. For you, what was the high point of that rescue?
Well,
briefly.
For me, the high point is the professionalism involved in the release. Though, as I said earlier on, it has been politicized. There are people that were saying ransom was paid. The security agencies were saying, no, it is not ransom, it is our effort. A lot of drama surrounding the release, it is our effort. And some other person said, well, we shouldn't have allowed it to happen. The most important thing is it happened and we overcame that situation. And those boys were released. So for me, it is the professionalism of the military in that conduct that is really impressive and is impressing to me.
And the communities.
Yeah, and the communities, because the collaboration, the information, because the military are not magic workers and the security agencies that went into that operation, it means that they got their intelligence right and then they move in with the intelligence they have, they plan according to that, and they deliver. So
Major General Nature did say, he did commend the collaboration and of course support of the states and state governors. So let's also move on.
Yes, so we're now talking about the NSAS movement way forward. One issue that dominated public discourse during the outgoing year is the NSAS protests. Claire?
Okay, so we ran some episodes on the protest, but we are grinding this episode titled NSAS Protest, Way Forward, and that episode was presented by Kingsley and Nadabo.
what started as a simple, if you like, single demand has NSAS. It's now blossoming into dimensions that are difficult to immediately grasp. What's your reading of what's playing out now, 2 weeks or so into the protests by youths in different parts of the country?
It's not uncommon for social movements to have a life cycle, as it were. Sometimes they will start with a clear demand, and then as they metamorphose, other demands would creep into the movement. Historically, I mean, the most recent example I'll give is the Michael Floyd protest in George Floyd, sorry, in the US, that metamorphosed into the Black Lives Matters movement. From the US, it went as far as, almost all the continents across the world. So that's not uncommon. Then you have also instances where social movements, protests come out with just one demand, and then the demand is met, and they demobilize, as it were. The best example I can give is the situation in Egypt in 2011, when they came out and demanded for a change in government, and then that happened, and they went back home. So it's a mix of things. In the case of the NSAS movement, the mobilization started on social media, of course, with the hash NSAS, tag. Of course, over time, they would come out, make demands, and then this most recent one seemed to have generated a bit longer than the previous one. And there could be reasons for that. One of them is that the obvious demand has been NSAS, but then ingrained in that obvious demand, there seem to be several other demands. Some of the narrative out there is that it's a political demand, that perhaps others have hidden under the obvious demand, which is the NSAS movement, and that there is, in the ultimate, a political demand, which could come one of two things: regime change, or, like some have said, the cry for restructuring. That ultimately that is what the movement will metamorphose. Then there is also the possibility that, unfortunately, criminals would have crept into some aspects of the movement, and that they are using it to benefit from it. As a good example is, some people are generating revenue or money, as it were, maliciously from the movement under a lot of claims. And then, of course, there is the perspective that says it's a social movement that wants change, and that those change are genuine. Those who are behind that theory suggest that there are between 40 and 70 million Nigerian youths that are either unemployed, underemployed, or that are disenchanted for one reason or the other. And so they have rallied around this hash NSAS tag, and they are venting their frustration and anger.
I think most Nigerians identify with the protest in such a way that, yes, there's been police brutality in this country. There has been so many issues associated with the police. But are all the policemen bad? No. Are policemen necessary? Yes. Should the government do something better? Yes. So in such kind of thing, we as Nigerians, most of us agree with what is happening, but what most Nigerians don't agree is the fact that roads will be blocked. No matter how much, these kids have the right to protest, and we identify with them. But the way they have the right to protest, other Nigerians have also right of free passage. You cannot block the road in the name of demonstration. We understand. And the government has yielded to the demands. So I think it is also only fair that they chill, they wait a little and see whether the government could, actualize these things. And then look, you find out that some of the kids, even their mode of dressing, it's not part of our culture in this country as Muslims and Christians. Some of the things they show, in the protest those things are not, are not good for us as a people. So I think it is also good for us as a country to rally around all of us. Who is government? All of us are government. Whether the government is making mistakes, yes, there are mistakes, and and the government for the first time has admitted that yes, there are issues, and we have to be civil. Being civil, the government came out to say that they will set up panels, and as long as we are going to be civil, there must be, the people must give time to the government and probably hold the government accountable after some time. If the government does not seem to be serious, then we can all come out. Everybody can come out. But in such a time when you block road, you put one demand, it's met, you put another, and for, just like what Dr. Kabir said, yes, we that are politicians think that there are political undertones. And look, we are operating politics, constitutional democracy. There are ways to change government. If you're not happy with this government, wait when the time comes to remove the government, put another one.
That the new SWAT that has been established is to be manned or to be dominated by people of good integrity and record within the police. But we cannot say end SARS, end SWAT. There is nowhere anywhere in the world that police does not have some of these tactical units, except we want to joke with our security, not only at the national level, even within the international fora. So the tactical approach, whereby the police believes that there must be a unit to check certain SSCs, is a welcome development, and the youth should show high level of understanding in ensuring that this country actually belongs to everybody, and nobody wants Nigeria to be a doomed country.
Yes, and I think we should also kind of now persuade the youth that look, it is dishonorable of you to set goals and then start moving the goals. You can't move the goalposts in the middle of a game. You've already given us 5 for 5. Let us deal with those 5 for 5. This is a system. This is a social system. It's not only about you. In fact, like the Honorable said just now, in some parts of the country, people are even hailing SARS and saying they love SARS. I think particularly in the Northeast where we have that conflict ongoing. So having said that, I just want to say, look, let us be strategic, and let us be creative. Let us not use intuitive mechanisms. That's my problem. Let's not do it the way we used to do it in those old days. It's not going to work. Let us be very strategic. Let us be very creative. Let us use structured analytical thinking. Let us do some good intelligence analysis and then go forward to solve this problem. There are solutions, and I agree with Mr. Kabir. We cannot discuss everything on air. There are solutions, and there are ways to solve, even to cure the problems of leaderless organizations.
Indeed, not everything can be discussed on air because the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court says the court froze companies' accounts and not individuals. 123,513 cases are still pending before the court. He said it is not true that the court froze the account of promoters of NSAS. Now, the maltreatment of Nigerian students abroad captured the attention of Good Morning Nigeria.
I think you're moving on to another episode.
No, it's connected, Claire. It's connected, especially during lockdown arising from COVID-19 pandemic has become a source of concern to many well-meaning Nigerians, including the NTA family. And as such, we dedicated an edition of Good Morning Nigeria to enlighten Nigerians on the consequences of the actions and efforts to stem the tide of the ugly act. Kingsley and Claire were on set for the discussion.
I think we have to hold on to that episode first, because that episode was on issue of rape. But let's look at the NSAS, which was a defining moment for Nigeria. And for us here on Good Morning Nigeria, it was a very sensitive topic. Again, given the issues involved, like Dr. Ona said, 5 for 5 initially, and then moving the goalpost in the middle of the game, that was one. And then secondly, there were also other parts of the country that said, look, what you're asking for is not what we want. So for you, what was the defining moment during that period?
Well, for me, I will rather come to the issues the NSAS protest has thrown up, and probably maybe lessons learned therefrom. First, the youth that organize. At least they organize around an issue. The protest was peaceful to a large extent until when the shifting of goalposts occurred at a certain point in time. Secondly, most of the youth that organize the protests are not versed in the art of governance. They do not know that it usually takes time for government to respond to issues. So it's not issue of a personal decision where you can sit and say, okay, I'm going to do A, B, C, D. If government makes a pronouncement today, it may take a month, depending on the efficiency of the system, to bring together people and resources to solve that problem. So when well-meaning Nigerians were saying, after giving your demands and government said we've accepted, they needed to step back and watch government function effectively to address the concern.
What was the lessons learned on the part of government and on the part of the youth?
Yeah, that is exactly what I'm discussing.
Yes.
Now, the youth fail to understand that governance is not like taking a personal decision where you sit in your room and say, I'm not going out tomorrow. Government decision takes time because of the nature of the bureaucracy. So if the government now said, okay, we're ending SARS tomorrow, and then we're coming up with new initiative, you don't expect that new initiative will take off immediately. Paperwork will need to be done, and then resources voted for that. So government decision and implementation usually take time. So there is always a time lag between pronouncement and implementation. And that is why the well-meaning Nigerians that understand governance process were like, okay, government said they've accepted your demand. Why don't you just go home and wait for government action? Because they understood that it will not take immediate effect, that government needed to put in place machineries.
We need to move on. Just give us, so far, it has died down.
Yes.
What have we learned? What has government learned in terms of engaging the youth? And what has the youth learned in terms of engaging government?
The first thing is that government needs to be proactive. Proactive in the sense that you don't wait for protests in order for you to introduce changes to the system that will enhance the system functioning. And then the youth should understand that government is not like the way we run ourselves, that if you make a demand on government, it is a connected system and government needed time in order to put things in place. But what is important is that the youth must play their role in holding government accountable without violence.
Thank you. Jube, I know you... hello, Jube, are you still with me?
Yeah, I'm listening.
The communication, you missed the communication earlier on. So we'll probably take a short break. You want to take that?
Yes, we'll be right back. Don't go away.
My name is Nando Jamda Mohammed.
Stevita.
Hussein Musa. Goduna Joel Finji. Said Musa John. I'm a carpenter. I've been doing this for more than 8 years now.
And I said that plantain. Nakai Chimami Shekara Uku.
I've been selling my tomatoes for about 10 years now, and I do it for a better Nigeria.
And I do it for a better Nigeria.
Now, when the Sana and Lemune Domin Nigeria to take about Domin Nigeria to come. And you can see how we're doing our small little work to make Nigeria great.
As you can see, I'm a technician and I'm doing it to help myself and to help my generation.
Una don't hear say them they rape about 35% of them girl picking, and even them women safe. Some of them, they even die in the process. Emotional trauma, uncle, they make some of them be like, say, they don't do this one again, they don't go, but they live like ghosts. Some of them, shame don't make them go kill themselves. It no good, oh. This no be our culture. It no fit be the African way. Why we can't allow this kind of thing join body with us, so they loud where. If you know they fear law where man put, you know they fear Baba God there. You self, you where they cover mouth so you see mini one they happen. You know what here when the Oyibo talk say problem where they bring come out, then they solve and sharply. Remember, person will feel rape. If it's a key person, oh, if it be you, if it be your pikin, if it be person them where you love well. So make we learn they carry women then like diamond where we be. No grief for rape, oh.
Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
Tottenham Hotspur ended 2020 in a slump, but will their fortunes change when they take on Leeds United in their first game of 2021 on Saturday? It's Tottenham versus Leeds United on the Premier League Live, showing on the NTA network from 1 p.m. The Premier League Live is brought to you by Axis Bank, Babai Jebu, Lipton, and Close Up in association with Goal.com.
All right, so increasing rate of rape cases in Nigeria, especially during lockdown, arising from COVID-19 pandemic, has become a source of concern to many well-meaning Nigerians, including the NTA family.
And as such, we dedicated an edition of Good Morning Nigeria to enlighten Nigerians on the consequences of the action and efforts to stem the tide of the ugly act. Kingsley and Claire Warren set for the discussion.
She has taken the courage to tell her story. Tamara, in part of the story you told, it's been quite a while. So my first question to you will be, why did you decide to break the silence now?
Well, I decided to break the silence because it's been a burden over the years. It has affected my life as a person. I've nursed this grudge over the years, and it's making me psychologically imbalanced. So I had to get myself out of the situation, and I said to myself, the best way to go about this is to speak out. I've encountered people, friends, men who have admired me in one way or the other. They try to approach me for a relationship. Some even want to get married to me, but they just see this girl pulling back and they keep asking, what is your problem, Tamara? I couldn't say anything. Not until I posted my story on Facebook, and immediately I started getting calls. So this is the reason you have been pulling back. So it wasn't an easy decision for me to take, because I considered my family, my career, my personality, and a lot of other things that I cannot mention at the moment. But of course, I had to take that bold step and ease my mind and free myself. Just imagine, he just had his way. I was crying, screaming. Nobody could hear my voice. It was a very horrible experience. As I'm speaking now, I can still see the picture of myself that day.
I cannot stand listening to this story. There are millions of Tamara out there. There are so many women and young girls dying in silence. But I thank God that Tamara has been able to break the silence. My heart bleeds where parents compromise. I want to appeal to parents. Parents must be true parents. We must stand by our children. The child needs to be protected. If we don't protect our children, we'll do that. This scar will live with her. I thank God her mother was able to pull her from a girls' school to a mixed school where she could at least mix and get out of it. But it's a difficult scar that can hardly be erased. This is not a problem that affects only the Ministry of Women Affairs. It's a societal problem. It's a security problem. All hands must be on deck. I appeal to the consciousness of all Nigerians. I appeal to everyone to please join hands with us. We are in the battlefield. It's a war that if we join hands together, particularly the police, all well-meaning Nigerians, if we join hands together, we can win this war. The community must carry this war and own it.
When it comes to child molestations sexually, a lot of them they're even more underreported than that of adults, because that of adults, a lot of them could come out and talk. But when it comes to child molestation, a lot of the processes that led to the sexual molestation of those children are not even forceful. Some of them, they employ they seduce them, they do enticement, they do entrapment, they do all kind of things. It is actually few of them. The real people that do child molestation, because there are two categories of persons that usually sexually molest children. There are those that we call situational child molesters. These situational child molesters are those that by nature they don't have any special preference for children, but opportunity, situational stress and any kind of thing can make them to sexually molest the children.
I stand with Tamara. You see, I am also Tamara. For every girl that the state has failed, for every child that is carrying a burden, today I am Tamara. You know, I am that little girl that the state has failed to protect. I am that little girl that the family has failed to protect. Today I am Tamara. And my healing also starts today. You see, we must actively interrogate the points of statehood. Perhaps if Tamara grew up in the wild, she would have acquired skills of protection. I'm telling you. Do you now see why somewhere in the north they'll say, this little girl murdered her husband? But Tamara was given a sense of false security. The state has that responsibility, particularly to protect the vulnerable. That is how we measure our statehood and civilization. How do we treat the vulnerable? It's not about the strong, the vulnerable, the child who lacks consent, that child who everybody is uncle, everybody is uncle. Bring donuts, bring it to my shop. How if the state is not capable? Because I have to blame it on the state. The state should be so strong as to compel behavior, even from Tamara's caregivers.
You know, Claire, after this interview, when I watched, I cried at home and I was still crying. You know,
it's always Tamara's story. It's always emotional story.
Tamara, when you see her, the smile on her face tells a different story. Yes. Because she's always smiling and, you know, trying to crack jokes, and nobody would ever know she has gone through such a traumatic experience. And
by the way, Tamara is a female sports presenter here, a very strong-willed personality. Her story is always so renting. Let's take another story that's also related, and that follows the hue and cry over sexual harassment of female students by lecturers in tertiary institutions. Now, the National Assembly passed a bill known as Sexual Harassment Bill 2020.
And to bring the content of the legislation to the knowledge of Nigerians, we put together some key players to x-ray the bill with Kisley and Claire moderating the program. Be right back.
we had, as I said, an extensive study of the situation, where we even saw that the National Universities Commission at a point issued a report where it said conclusively that sexual harassment of students is one of the most serious infractions in tertiary institutions. And we also saw that there was a report issued by ASU at a point in time where it said that that report made clear that there were no solutions to the problem.
There were no solutions?
There were no solutions as at that time. That what they only do, using the exact words, that they are only using moral suasion to get their members to do what is right. You see, where there is a problem that has assumed that pandemic size in society, you don't want to leave it to moral suasion. The legislator must look at the laws in place and see what you can do. So he said, look, let us do this bill. And we did it, and it received wide acceptance, expectedly, because as I said in my opening remark at the beginning, if this is a problem that is in almost every home, or where that is felt in every home in the country, then naturally we thought that it should be well received, and that is what has happened. So that primarily is a justification that there is a problem. The problem has been identified by various stakeholders. There is consensus, near consensus, that it should be dealt with.
Why has this been so that we haven't found internal solutions from within the academia?
Like you said, this is an issue or a problem that has been with us from time immemorial, and it seems that it is it has escalated to the state of a pandemic, to the extent that we are now seeing these things even on the increase. The issue is the legislation for this type of acts has never been properly implemented. In fact, there are lapses in this legislation that has made it easy for people to continue to do these things and get away with it. And even though this bill is particular to the academia, you need to also take note that the existing legislation is that encompasses the whole of the society or the whole of Nigeria, because when you commit these crimes, is the same legislation that works on it, whether in the academia or outside academia. But now we have a bill that is specifically looking at the tertiary institutions generally, not necessarily the university, as it were. So I think why these things had continued was because there were no stringent penalties for these offenses in the first instance. Now that this bill is out, we do hope that it becomes law and that people in the academia will become very conscious of the existence of this bill, and perhaps it will reduce the rate of perpetration in the institutions.
Sexual harassment it has actually gotten to that stage you can actually say it is pandemic. And I must tell you that sexual harassment is practically in every facet of our lives, not just in tertiary institution, but of course that of the tertiary institution has taken a front stage, particularly after the documentary that was done by BBC, where a live instance happened in Unilag and also in Ghana. So that really brought the issue to the front burner. But I can assure you that even, in fact, it is even worse in the workplace, in places where people work and all that. And that was why when the Senate did the public hearing in respect of the sexual harassment, a group of civil society had submitted a memoranda to say, can we, broaden the scope, and not just in the tertiary institution, in workplace, it is happening even in the secondary schools, and also you won't believe it, even in primary schools these things are happening.
But do you see a vacuum or a gap in existing legislation that this one is
there is. In fact, this is the first time sexual harassment is brought out and criminalized. And I recall while I was country director of IPAS, I left IPAS last year, November, there was a study done about countries that have sexual harassment laws. Nigeria was one of them that didn't have. We didn't have sexual harassment as a crime. But there are, the penal code and the criminal code has provisions for domestic violence, assault, and what have you. But sexual harassment as a crime, there was none. So this bill is actually coming in to fill a gap that is there.
The issue under discussion here is about the desirability or otherwise of that legislation. Of course, I need to make some initial clarifications. ASU as a union does not support sexual harassment under any guise. ASU has consistently worked with university authorities to see how we could prevent and control cases of sexual harassment on our campuses. ASU as a union has on every campus a committee, we call ethics committee, that addresses issues of relationship with our students, unethical practices among our members. And at every point, the union does not hesitate to escalate whatever findings will come about our members who are having unethical behaviors. So, in summary, ASU will work for and support a move that is fair and just in addressing this problem. But where ASU has problem is the nature of this legislation. I want to thank Awa in the house there, in your studio, who has actually brought out the key issue that came up during public hearing that we had on this piece of legislation earlier in the year. We had engaged government or the National Assembly on the discriminatory nature of this legislation.
Yes, we see the ASU president saying, but Amiso, shouldn't they have a, sort of a number of, girls or boys at times? It's not only girls, Boys too have been raped in so many ways.
Yeah, I think one of the fundamental problems that is really militating against the fight against either rape or sexual harassment has to do with the level of support the society is willing to give. and the stigmatization that goes with that. If people are comfortable that if they come out and speak, the society was going to give them support, was going to assist them to heal without being stigmatized, a lot of people will come out to say their stories and they will get the needed support. But in Nigeria, once you're a victim of sexual harassment, you become an outcast. Nobody is willing to talk to you. In fact, the ladies are not going to get married easily.
And in case you get pregnant.
Yes, you get pregnant.
In fact, you are victimized if you're in
so is that victimization, I mean, that usually propel people to die in silence, and that is why the case of suicide is becoming alarming. It is painful as a person that you are overpowered, what you coveted much, what you are protecting, your dignity, your human being has been, your being has been taken away from you forcefully by somebody that has the capacity and the means to beat the system, to make you look stupid without anybody coming to your rescue. And I can feel the submission of the other woman that was saying that the state failed. Now, if you look at it, it's in both ways. The society that is not giving the support that is needed, the government that cannot get justice on behalf of the victimized is another thing. And then the parent that we keep quiet because they feel that the person is powerful, or that we even negotiate on behalf of their children and then they are paid. And then these are a whole lot of issues that go into this particular gamut of discussion we are having. So first is the society. What values are we giving to our children, male and female? I know for sure that when our mothers give birth to us, they concentrate on the females because they realize that they are delicate beings that are supposed to be protected, and every brother will want to protect the sister. The society should be able, because the woman is the point of life. They bring us into being and they cater for us and they nurture us. They give us our first values. Now the question is, how did we get here? What did we get wrong? To the extent that today fathers are raping their daughters, uncles are raping their own relatives, and then even kill them.
Even siblings. But let me put you on hold and also talk about the fact that, as Tamara narrated her, story.
Yes.
Very emotional story.
Yeah.
Other people have come up also to narrate their own stories. And we've seen a number of actions. In fact, this is the first time I'm seeing a concerted, coordinated effort by women themselves, to take the bull by the horn. A number of states have come out to even open a register, naming and shaming. Ekiti State had done that. I know Borno State is doing that. And the Niger State is doing that. Kwara State is doing that. Most of the states have domesticated the laws, against rape issues. But so far, what do you think in terms of actions? Are we making reasonable impact? Especially with sexual harassment in the tertiary school. You are a member of ASU, for instance.
Well,
I'm not putting you on.
No. We're having a conversation. I'm disappointed in the speech of the ASU president, because I was expecting him to say, we've treated 30 cases, we've dismissed 10 lecturers, we've dismissed. It's not saying that, and it's grandstanding. As far as I'm concerned, that is not the way to go. The way to go is to tell us in specific terms, okay, when I came to office, I met this problem, we set up a committee, and about 50 lecturers have been dismissed, about 40 people are on probation. He didn't say that. It's equally questioning the bill. That the bill is narrowed against them. But we are talking about a situation here. The university is a place to mold character. And once you destroy character in the university, you've equally destroyed the society. So as far as I'm concerned, it is not about the bill. It's about what ASU is doing to checkmate the excesses of their lecturers, because we have cases where a lecturer denied ladies graduation and then asked them to accede to their request to have carnal knowledge of them, and then will ask the same lady to go and book hotel accommodation, and before they can do
and
that,
even
and
after
then
that they
that.
must still fail.
Yeah, so it's a bad situation.
And the governor's wives have come together to really, check the issue of rape. I'm sure you're aware of it.
Yes.
I'm sure you're aware of it as well.
Now the problem with that is once government is not involved, then you can get a lot done. All you could do is to name and shame, and then people walk away. And by the time that is happening, it gives others like them the mindset that they can do it and nothing will happen. And that is where impunity comes in. It is the responsibility of the state to stamp out impunity so that people will know that once you are involved, you get punished.
Okay, Dr. Amisu, let's quickly go to our tweets. Festus Akimboyewa tweets, NTA GMN continues to shine a light on what's happening in our country and how to make our country better via daily interactive discussions of Nigeria's current affairs. Kudos to the entire team.
And Mogbola Babs Omo Naija tweets, thanks to the entire crew for holding on all through the year in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic and its concomitant disruptions. More power to your elbows in the coming year. Thank you.
And Mike Anyako tweets, NTA GMN is still the best, but there's some room for improvement. More time should be given to newspaper review. Please, it should be one topic by day. Two per day is not good. Bravo.
All right, I'm sure our producers are listening. And Oladimeji Suleiman, Babagana, Leo Fadeka, Sheikh Joe Piro, and Alhaji Musa Mohammed Adejia. All of you have tweeted, and thank you for your kind words for GMN crew. And we promise, we keep our fingers crossed.
So Roger Federer to miss Australian Open for the first time in 21 years, and Barcelona's keeper Lionel Messi hints at a possible move to the United States when his contract with the Catalan Giants expires next summer. Let's join our sport desk for more details.